bienvenido a mi canal. Yo me llamo Sirey. Soy una abogada afro-latina licenciada practicando la ley criminal, pero como todos ustedes, a mí me fascina cuando estamos hablando de casos de crímenes reales. En este video vamos a hablar del caso de Diddy. Si quieren más video en español, nada más dime allá abajo. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Desiree. I'm a licensed and practicing Afro-Latina criminal attorney who, much like the rest of you, has a severe fascination with true crime cases. Listen, you guys know how I refer to the Adelson case or cases as the cases that keep on giving? Well, I feel like Diddy's case has actually become one of those for me. It is Christmas Eve, and I just got notification that Diddy's attorneys filed another appeal. The document itself is not yet publicly made available, so I can't go through all of the arguments that they make, but there are numerous articles explaining and summarizing exactly what he's arguing. So let's go ahead and get into that now, shall we? According to ABC7, lawyers for hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs urged a federal appeals court in New York late Tuesday, so December 23rd of 2025, to order his immediate release from prison and reverse his conviction on prostitution-related charges, or direct his trial judge to lighten his 4-year sentence. The lawyers said in a filing with the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan that Combs was treated harshly at sentencing by a federal judge who let evidence surrounding charges he was acquitted of unjustly influence the punishment. Holmes, 56, incarcerated at a federal prison in New Jersey and scheduled for release in May 2028, was acquitted of racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking at a trial that ended in July. Combs was convicted under the Mann Act, which bans transporting people across state lines for any sexual crime. Lawyers for Combs said Judge Arun Subramanian acted like a, quote, 13th juror in October when he sentenced Combs to 4 years and 2 months in prison. They said he erred by letting evidence surrounding the acquitted charges influence the sentence he imposed. They noted that Combs was convicted of 2 lesser counts, prostitution offenses, that didn't require force, fraud, or coercion. They asked the appeals court, which had not yet heard oral arguments, to acquit Combs, order his immediate release from prison, or direct Subramanian to reduce his sentence. Defendants typically get sentenced to less than 15 months for these offenses, even when coercion, which the jury didn't find here, is involved, the lawyers wrote. The judge defied the jury's verdict and found Combs coerced, exploited, and forced his girlfriends to have sex and led a criminal conspiracy. These judicial findings trumped the verdict and led to the highest sentence ever imposed for any remotely similar defendant, the lawyers wrote. At sentencing, Subramanian said that when calculating the prison term, he considered Combs' treatment of 2 former girlfriends who testified that the Bad Boy Records founder beat them and coerced them into having sex with male sex workers while he watched and filmed the encounters, sometimes masturbating. At the trial, former girlfriend Cassandra Cassie Ventura testified that Combs ordered her to have disgusting sex with strangers hundreds of times during their decade-long relationship that ended in 2018. Jurors saw video of him dragging and beating her in a Los Angeles hotel hallway after one such multi-day freak-off. The second former girlfriend, who testified under the pseudonym Jane, said she was pressured into sex with male workers during what Combs called hotel nights, drug-fueled sexual encounters from 2021 to 2024 that could also last days. At sentencing, Subramanian said he rejects the defense attempts to characterize what happened here as a merely intimate, consensual experiences or just a sex, drugs, and rock and roll history. He added, "You abused the power and control that you had over the lives of women you profess to love dearly. You abused them physically, emotionally, and psychologically. And you used that abuse to get your way, especially when it came to freak-offs and hotel nights." The New York Times wrote an article on this as well. Sean Combs' lawyers file appeal, arguing his sentence was unjust. The mogul's lawyers say that a judge issued an excessively steep sentence for prostitution offenses after Mr. Combs was acquitted of more serious charges. Lawyers for the music mogul Sean Combs on Tuesday, December 23rd of 2025, appealed his conviction and sentencing on prostitution-related charges, saying that the sexual encounters at the heart of this case were consensual and that the trial judge handed down an improperly steep sentence. In a federal trial in Manhattan this past summer, a jury found Mr. Combs guilty on 2 counts of transporting individuals for the purposes of prostitution, charges that centered on his orchestration of fetishistic sex marathons involving his girlfriends and male escorts that he frequently filmed. The jury acquitted Mr. Combs, known as Puff Daddy or Diddy, on sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy charges, which carried the possibility of life in prison. In October, Mr. Combs, 56, was sentenced to 50 months, or a little more than 4 years, and transferred from the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where he had been held since his arrest in September of 2024, to a federal facility in New Jersey known as Fort Dix. In an 84-page appeal brief filed with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in Manhattan, Mr. Combs' lawyers depicted the case as an unjust prosecution of sex between consenting adults. In sentencing Mr. Combs, his lawyer argued the judge unfairly relied on his own determinations that women had been coerced, exploited, and forced into sexual encounters when the jury made no such finding. He sits in prison today, serving a 50-month sentence because the district judge acted as a 13th juror, Mr. Combs' lawyers wrote. During the 8-week trial, 2 of Mr. Combs' former girlfriends testified that they had repeatedly engaged in drug-fueled nights of sex with men hired through online escort services because they felt pressured to participate and feared Mr. Combs' retaliation. Both women testified to physical abuse by Mr. Combs at times in connection with the sexual encounters, which were known as freak-offs or hotel nights. Mr. Combs, who did not testify at trial, has long maintained that the sex at issue in the case was entirely consensual. In the appeal brief, his lawyers argued that the jury endorsed that argument when they rejected the sex trafficking charges, which focus on sex acts that were induced by force, fraud, or coercion, yet convicted him of the prostitution counts. The appeal by Mr. Combs' lawyers also asked the appellate court to scrutinize the prosecution's application of the Mann Act, the 1910 federal law under which Mr. Combs was convicted, which makes it a federal offense to transport people across state lines for the purposes of prostitution, saying that Mr. Combs was paying for a voyeuristic experience rather than engaging in prostitution. Mr. Combs' lawyers argued that the law should be limited to situations in which a paying customer engages in sex. Prosecutors have contended that Mr. Combs' lawyers have sought to minimize serious Mann Act violations, arguing that they were repeated offenses over a period of 15 months and had devastating psychological effects on the women involved. The defense has tried to turn this into a technical violation, just a minor consequence of sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle, said Christy Slavic, one of the prosecutors at Mr. Combs' sentencing hearing in October. This is a gross mischaracterization of the conduct. Mr. Combs' lawyers also argued that the encounters were protected by the First Amendment because they were often filmed, asserting that they amounted to highly choreographed performances involving costumes, lighting, and other stage effects. The judge who oversaw the trial, Arun Subramanian, previously rejected that argument, finding that illegal activity can't be laundered into constitutionally protected activity just by the desire to watch it. In handing down the sentence, Judge Subramanian said he had the legal authority to take into account any conduct that was relevant to Mr. Combs' conviction, including evidence of what he described as physical, emotional, and psychological abuse. A substantial sentence must be given to send a message to abusers and victims alike that exploitation and violence against women is met with real accountability, the judge said during the sentencing hearing. Mr. Combs' appeal is being led by Alexandra Shapiro, a top appellate lawyer who once clerked for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. Among Ms. Shapiro's recent appeal cases are those of the cryptocurrency executive Sam Bankman-Fried and Bill Huang, a hedge fund founder who last year was sentenced to 18 years in prison for fraud and racketeering. The appeal will take months for the court to consider. In prison, Mr. Combs has entered a drug abuse rehabilitation program, which has the potential to shorten his sentence significantly. Bureau of Prisons records currently estimate that Mr. Combs will be released in May of 2028, taking into account his ability to earn time off for good behavior. Okay, so you guys heard it from Diddy's attorneys. They think that the judge in this case improperly considered evidence of some of the dismissed charges when issuing or sentencing Diddy to 50 months. I don't know if we've talked about this before, and I think I might have said it before, but the Diddy videos seem so far gone, like in the YouTube-osphere of what I've done recently. But the court can consider evidence that it finds relevant when sentencing a defendant. I don't believe that what defense said properly articulates what occurred. And I'm not calling them liars. I'm just saying we are attorneys by trade. So we make the arguments that we find necessary and appropriate. I just happen to disagree with what they articulated. If I will remind you guys, Diddy got convicted of 2 separate charges of transporting people for the purposes of prostitution, or transportation for the purposes of prostitution. If the court chose to impose the maximum, that was 10 years per count for a maximum of 20 years, should the court choose to impose those consecutively. Now, in federal court, there's a thing called guidelines or sentencing guidelines. So more specifically, even though Diddy was facing a maximum of 20 years, if both of those charges were to be run consecutively, what happens is a PSI is conducted and a PSI writer, aka a probation officer, will let the court know what the recommended guideline range is for this particular defendant. Don't crucify me because I don't remember exactly everything that we discussed in prior videos, but they're on my page, luckily for you, should you choose to refresh yourself on this case. But I remember there being a dispute about what was the particular guideline range for this defendant between both sides and what have you. All this to say, I believe that the court sentenced Diddy within the applicable guideline range. I don't blame Diddy's attorneys for trying. That is what they are getting paid for. They need to make the arguments that they find crucial, prudent, and necessary on behalf of their client. As I read to you guys, it's going to take quite some time for a decision to be made as to this specific appeal. My predictions are it's not going to get granted. And let's assume I am wrong and it does get granted. If it takes 2 or 3 years for the appeal to be decided, Diddy's going to be out of prison anyway. But because this just came out, I wanted to make sure to share it with you guys. But please go ahead and let me know all your thoughts down below. Let me know if you agree with Diddy's attorneys filing this appeal. Let me know if you agree with my assessment of what may happen and my prediction of what might happen, or the decision that might be made on this appeal. Just let me know anything it is you want to let me know down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, y'all take care.